Hey there, this is Yanis, and this is I can believe it, this is my 6th video in my personal series. And this time I'd like to make it a little bit different. So over the weekend I've been working on a set of JavaScript exercises in which you get to implement one of the handy functions that currently the JavaScript library is lacking. And in this video I thought maybe just let's walk through this and just quickly solve those together. So let's start. So repository is called JSEX, which is it sounds fun, but it stands for JavaScript exercises. And we'll simply clone it first. Then let's install the packages. npm. I'm pretty sure there's just one single jest package in it, but whatever. And then you can simply run the tests. Which initially will fail. As you can see, there are 11 failed tests. So those are the 11 tasks that we'd like to execute. So in the structure here, you can see that all the tasks are divided into the 4 categories: easy, medium, then hard, and then extra hard. And actually extra hard and hard are pretty much the same level, but I just wanted to make 4 groups. So the first exercise is map, and you know, map function is a very popular function which takes an array and the mapper function and returns a new array, each element of which is a result of applying this mapper function to the initial element. Now let's actually try to do something like this. Close this tab, and then here we will split this pane vertically, and here we will run the jest in the watch mode. And let's try to solve this one. So, well, actually map it can be found on an array prototype, so we can simply do something like this. Which is obviously cheating, but in this case it should work. You can see we have one passed. But the proper way to solve this is to use the imperative programming and to simply say that we have a results array and then 4 elements of array. We will do something like this. We will do result push fn applied to these elements, and then in the end we will return the result. Let's see if it still passes. Yep, it does. So let's move on to the next one, which is filter. In this case here I'm saying that please this time try to use the reduce function, because you know reduce is a very popular function which you can use to implement like almost anything. So again we have an array and a function, and let's call the reduce function here. You know it takes 2 arguments. The first one is a function which does something, and the second argument is the initial value. In this case we'll simply take the empty array. And here we will need to do something like this. We will need to apply this function to an element, and if it returns true, then we will put these elements into the output array. Otherwise, we will simply skip it and return the array itself. Didn't work. Why? Because I forgot to actually return this value. Okay, looks good. Now we have two passed. So what's the third one? Third one is called unique. And you know, the unique function is a function that takes an array of numbers or an array of anything, and it makes sure that there are no duplicates in the output value. So how can we do this? Again, let's try to use reduce here. This will be again a function and an elements, and the initial value will be an empty array. But here, this time, we simply would like to check if the array already have the value that we're dealing with here. So we're simply saying if index of element is equal to -1, which means that this array doesn't have this element yet. In this case, we will put the elements into the array. Otherwise, we will simply return the array itself. Let's see if it helps. Yep, as you can see, we now have 3 passed. Okay, so that was easy level. Let's move on to the medium. We're starting with the flatten. Now, actually, flatten is a function that you can use to remove inner arrays. So, for example, if you have a structure like this one, array inside of which another array, in the output you will have all the only plain values without inner arrays. And no matter how deep, it should still return you just a single array. So how can we implement this one? Actually, it's not that hard, but the tricky thing here is that we need to use both reduce and recursion. So the solution here would look something like this. We again return a reducer. Again, the initial value is an empty array. But here, what we would like to check is if the current element is an array. And in this case, we will return a new array, which will actually... So we flatten this array first, and then we put all the values into the current value. And otherwise, we will simply put the element itself into the array. So it might look tricky at first, so let me just format it a little bit. So if you have an array, if element is an array, then we use a recursion to flatten it. Otherwise, we simply put the value itself into the array. So let's see if it works. No. Okay, so eventually I made it work. Don't ask me why, I have no idea what was wrong with the initial version, but now it works, so just moving on. So this is my favorite. So as you know, the reduce is pretty handy, but The question is, how would you implement the reduce function itself? And we can, of course, use here an imperative approach as well, but this is no fun. So instead, let's try to use a recursion maybe. What we will do here is that we say that if array length is 0, then we will simply return the initial value. Otherwise, we will call reduce. And first, let's take head and tail from this array. And so we will call the reduce now with the tail, of course. And the function itself should be the same, but the initial value will be, this time, will be initial and head here. So something like this should work. Oh yeah, sure, I forgot to put return here, as I always do. Okay, cool, so now we have 5 passed. Let's move on to the 6th one. Alright, so this one is actually pretty interesting. So here we have a list of users with hobbies, and what we'd like to get in return here is a list of hobbies with the user set. So we kind of want to invert this one. Here we have users and an array of hobbies, and here we would like to have hobbies and an array of users. Okay, let's try to do this one a little bit faster. So we want to return the result, which will be an array, obviously, and we'll do an imperative approach. So we will do for each of those guys, and we have here name and hobbies, and then for each of the hobbies, let's call it H. What we should do is we should first try to find the item if it already exists in our array. By the way, this is not right. So we'll try find it. If the I hobby is equal H, and if it doesn't exist, we should create it first. Name, yeah, we can do like this, and we can do, no, we should do like this, and then users empty array, and we should push it into our result array. And here we should check if the item users already has the name. If it's -1, then in this case we should push it here, and at the end we should return these results. So let's pray it works this time. What? No? Why? Because it's const, but it should be let, obviously. Okay, cool. Now we have 6 passed.